Good evening, folks. This is Deb and Dave, and this is your Factivist Report for Sunday, the 12th of November. Tonight, we're going to talk about the Heritage Foundation's diabolical, and I do mean that, master plan for all of us, and what we are going to need to do to fight back, because it is downright scary. And without further ado, I'm turning this over to Dave.
So before I get into my presentation, I want to say that when you have someone you are diametrically opposed to, and you consider them your enemy, you listen to what bothers them the most. And what bothers them the most is when people talk about our American history. What bothers the Heritage Foundation the most is when we talk about the American history, because the Heritage Foundation basically describes themselves as originalists of the Constitution. All right. They even talk about the Bill of Rights, which I will get into, and how the Bill of Rights have been warped and corrupted. But they aren't so much concerned about everyone's human rights as they are about states' rights, quote unquote, and the separation of powers and making sure that their individual states can do what they want. Now, there's a couple things to that. Number one, that plan falls apart when you vote the Republicans out. Number one. Number two, the Heritage Foundation and the Convention of States, their master plan is to use Article 5 in the Constitution, which does state that the people can create a convention of states and call for constitutional amendments. This has scared the left wing and the progressives and the liberals and the Democrats for a long time. However, we have Democrats like Gavin Newsom and others, and I will get into some of it, who are fighting back and creating their own constitutional amendments. And this is what we need to start doing, pushing for our own amendments that will expand rights and not retract them. Now, I will get into it, but you're going to say, well, Dave, what about the Second Amendment? What about trying to create gun laws and all of that? Isn't that taking the rights away from Americans? No, it isn't, because every child, every woman, every person going to the grocery store, to the movie theater, they have a right to live. And we will get into a little bit the UN Declaration of Human Rights. And Deb and I, for many years, have been pushing for many of those rights to be introduced and included in our Constitution. I don't know if everyone is aware of this, but the abolishment of slavery is not in the Constitution. It's not.
Right.
Slavery needs to be abolished. Now, part of that might be because of prison work and all of that stuff, but that needs to be worked out. It does.
And the originalists when they're talking about the originalists, they're really talking about the originalists. They're
Right.
really talking about no rights for people of color, no rights for LGBT people,
Women.
no rights for women. I mean, I'm if you are out there, floating around on right-wing social media, every once in a while I take a little trip down memory lane, and we have people out there, out there proselytizing, and I know they're all talking to far right people. I get that, but they're out there basically saying that the country began to fall apart when women got the vote. I mean, all of this stuff that comes out of these people's mouths, I'm at the position. No, I used to be the kind of person that used to just, just right wing bullshit talk, more pie in the sky stuff. You know what? I'm not there anymore. I watched as they broke into the Capitol, and I watched what they did on real time on TV. All right, on my computer, and I put absolutely nothing past these people at this point. I really, really don't. As far as I'm concerned, we're not safe until they are completely gone or neutralized. As Jennifer Rubin said in her op-ed in the Washington Post, we need to purge it, and there can't be no survivors from MAGA left in the government. End of story, because they will just stay there and do it again.
Now, what bothers the right wing, the Heritage Foundation, people who go on Newsmax, the Orange Jackaloon, what bothers them more than anything? Journalism, free speech, speaking out against what they have said and what they have done, and pointing out our American history. We escaped British colonialism only to travel to another land and take over that land, which is the United States, gradually and eventually almost decimating and eliminating an entire race of people and the Native Americans. And they are Native Americans. They were here first. And our whole basis of government, much of it, is based on the very thing that we were fleeing in the first place. And we have to come to terms to that. We also have to come to terms with the fact that the people that we oppressed and the people that we never gave rights to before, now they have them. And those originalists, it drives them crazy. Okay? So here we go.
Honestly, and I know Dave's going to talk about it. If you've listened to Donald Trump's, or if you saw Donald Trump's Veterans Day post, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not the person who gets, very worked up or taken aback by stuff anymore, as I've seen enough. But that was about as bad as I've seen. I mean, he is pushing the envelope, and he's telling you exactly what he is.
In his speech, and I will be talking about it, he ripped up and burned the envelope.
Yeah, he did. It was really just, I really was quite, I mean, it really did bother me. I mean, it really just fucking blew my mind. And I guess what blows my mind more is that the media and the people treat this like it's just Donald being Donald. And it isn't. Okay? Manny being Manny was Manny going behind the green wall at Fenway Park and taking a piss. Okay?
Right.
This is the guy who's running for leader of the free world, and he's not talking about freedom. Okay?
He's calling for genocide, by the way.
Yeah.
He is.
He's also calling for putting the military on the streets the first day he's reelected. Don't laugh, folks. These people broke into the Capitol. Does everybody forget that? If you've forgotten that, maybe you want to go back and look at my collection of parlor videos, because that was filmed by the perpetrators, by the way. So,
And the Heritage Foundation endorses Trump.
yes, it does.
Now, their plan includes anyone who wins the election, anyone who is conservative, they call conservative, but right wing. Uh, they, they support him, and
They're
he out and out has violated the 14th Amendment in more ways than one. He has called for the elimination of citizens of the United States.
Yep. And by the way, I would like to just remind people, and I've said this before, that Donald Trump's first term saw him deliver 68% of what the Heritage Foundation put together for 2017.
Right.
I
thought it was 70, but yeah, right around in there.
Yeah, something around there, 68%, 70%. That's a lot. That's an awful lot of bad shit. Okay. And we know because we've watched Joe Biden try to reverse some of that in his first term.
So one of our weapons against all of this is the truth. And before I start talking about the Heritage Foundation, I'm going to bring up Howard Zinn and his explanation of manifest destiny and how it's dangerous. There's a couple of things. This is nationalism and how it's a dangerous thing because it puts rose-colored glasses over the oppression of people. So this was written July 2nd, 2006. Now, Howard Zinn passed away in 2010, but all of this is pertinent today. So, is not nationalism, that devotion to a flag, an anthem, a boundary so fierce it engenders mass murder, one of the greatest evils of our time, along with racism, along with religious hatred? These ways of thinking, cultivated, nurtured, indoctrinated from childhood on, have been useful to those in power and deadly for those out of power. National spirit can be benign in a country that is small and lacking both in military power and a hunger for expansion, like Switzerland, Norway, Costa Rica, etc. But in a nation like ours, huge, possessing thousands of weapons of mass destruction, what might have been harmless pride becomes an arrogant nationalism, dangerous to others and ourselves. We have to come to the realization that after we escaped colonialism and oppression and oppressive taxation, which was a big thing, warrantless searches and seizures by the British government, we became the very thing that we were trying to escape time after time after time. And with some of the legislation being proposed against the LGBTQ community, with voting rights, all of that, we're falling back into it. So there's a lot here on Manifest Destiny. Just realize a lot has changed since 1776. Technology, we have global warming we have to deal with, we have pandemics we have to deal with, and we have to deal with the fact that generations of those who were originally oppressed have developed and are now citizens of the United States and have to be not dealt with, but have to be communicated with. They are part of our nation now. That is the irony, and that is the karma that has been put on the United States. And both Howard Zinn and the ACLU recognize that human rights, especially for those who had not had them prior, and developing those rights is essential to any talk in regards to constitutional change. So we're going to talk about now three different groups and what their view is in regards to the in regards to the Constitution. First is the ACLU. Okay, they think it's a fantastic document, which does have its flaws because it took almost a century to gain rights for African Americans. It took longer than that for women to get the right to vote. And we still don't have an equal rights amendment. So, where it's a very good document in theory, it's only as good as the people who are behind it.
Let me point out two other things that we still don't have. Way back in 1994, when I was working for Millipore, I was working for the Human Rights Campaign. At that time, they were very much a small organization compared to what they are now. But I signed on to help pass the Employment Non-Discrimination Act,
right,
which would protect gay people and their allies from being fired just for being gay, and their allies from being fired just for supporting them. Now, this came about as a result of Cracker Barrel firing 36 employees for either being gay or for standing up for gay people. Okay. That was in 1994. I got my company to sign on to that. And I got several other companies to sign on to that. And that fight to pass the Employment Non-Discrimination Act is still ongoing today. It is 2023, 1994, 2023. It is still not passed. In 36 states, I believe, it is 26 states, one or the other, I can't remember. It is still legal to fire a gay person because you are gay. For what you are, not for what you did, or not for bad performance, or not for anything else. That act, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, actually turned into the Equality Act, which we also do not have at this time, which gives gay people the same rights as everybody else. We do not have the Equality Act. So those are two other things that are hanging out right now. One which turned into the Equality Act. We could solve all of those problems with the Equality Act, but you're never going to get that passed with the GOP in play.
Before I move on from the ACLU piece, they do mention exactly what Deb is talking about, that organizations were formed in order to enact civil rights for people through the Constitution, including but not limited to the ACLU and NAACP, founded more than a century ago in 1909. So this is an ongoing situation. We have had so many things happen since the Constitution was signed and ratified, and the Bill of Rights was signed and ratified. We've had an industrial revolution. We've had the labor movement. We've had the gay rights movement. We've had the civil rights movement. We've had women gain the right to vote. We have African Americans gain the right to vote. We have the 14th Amendment, which basically gives rights to all naturalized born citizens of the United States, including everyone. So there's a lot that's happened. Part of that also is the expansion of the United States. We started with 13 colonies. Because of our, what was it, God ordained us to have this land against these savages.
Yeah.
We expanded. Again, we became the very people we were trying to escape from. So I'm pretty much going to read this entire thing. from Howard Zinn. This is his view of the Constitution, and this is from August 1st, 1987. A people's constitution, some truths are not self-evident. And this is Howard Zinn. He wrote in The Nation, August 1st, 1987. Now, he basically asked, what is the most important question? Asking in regards to the Constitution. So this year, Americans are talking about the Constitution. We're talking about 1987, but asking the wrong questions, such as, could the founding fathers have done better? That concern is pointless 200 years after the fact. Or does the Constitution provide the framework for a just and democratic society today? That question is also misplaced because the Constitution, whatever its language and however interpreted by the Supreme Court, doesn't determine the degree of justice, liberty, or democracy in our society. The proper question, I believe, is not how good a document is or was the Constitution, but what effect does it have on the quality of our lives? And the answer to that, it seems to me, right now, very little. The Constitution makes promises itself cannot keep, or it cannot keep by itself, and therefore deludes us into complacency about the rights we have. It is conspicuously silent on certain other rights beings deserve, and it pretends to set limits on governmental powers when in fact those limits are easily ignored rather, such as a candidate running for office is supposed to live in the area in which they are running. It's supposed to be their primary residence. It is in the Constitution. How many times has the right wing ignored that? Dr. Oz, we had Herschel Walker, we've had a few others. I am not arguing that the Constitution has no importance. Words have moral power and principles can be useful even when ambiguous. But like other historic documents, it's very important. The Constitution is of minor importance compared with the actions that citizens take, especially when those actions are joined in social movements. Such movements have worked historically to secure the rights our human sensibilities tell us are self-evidently ours, whether or not those rights are granted by the Constitution. Basically, he is saying the Constitution lays forward a framework. We have to act on that framework and consistently fight for equal treatment under the law, especially for minorities. Let me illustrate my point with 5 issues of liberty and justice. First, the matter of racial equality. When slavery was abolished, it was not by constitutional fiat, but by the joining of military necessity with the moral force of a great anti-slavery movement acting outside the Constitution and often against the law. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments wrote into the Constitution rights that extra legal action had already won. And again, I will say, slavery has not been abolished in the Constitution.
Right.
It's time. But the 14th and 15th Amendments were ignored for almost 100 years. Then we had the right to equal protection of the law and right to vote. Even the Supreme Court decision in the Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, underlying the meaning of Equal Rights Protection Clause, did not become operative until blacks in the 15 years following the Montgomery bus boycott shook up the nation by activist action, tumultuous actions inside and outside the law. The Constitution played a helpful but marginal role in all that. Black people in the political context of the 1960s would have demanded equality whether or not the Constitution called for it, just as the anti-slavery movement demanded abolition even in the absence of constitutional support. And think of right now, women and others seeking personal sovereignty are fighting back in regards to abortion over and over again. The existence of a First Amendment has been inspirational, but its protection elusive. Its reality has depended on the willingness of the citizens, whether labor organizers, socialists, or Jehovah's Witnesses, to insist on their right to speak and write. How many times have you heard Donald Trump or anybody from the right wing call the media fake news when they present facts, and then bring out Newsmax or the Gateway Pundit or whoever? Whether in the future we have a right to say what we want or air what we say will be determined not by the existence of the First Amendment or the latest Supreme Court decision, but by whether or not we are courageous enough to speak up at the risk of being jailed or fired, organized enough to defend our speech against official interference, and can command resources enough to get our ideas before a reasonably large public, and also define what free speech is over and over and over again.
Yeah, let me say this. Howard Zinn in this paragraph is not defending Donald Trump's right.
He is not.
To attack and threaten people who work polling places, judges, jurors, or anyone else who may buck him, okay? Howard Zinn, don't misinterpret this, because the right will misinterpret this.
They will. Okay? They will.
They will take this as he's talking about Trump's right to post whatever he wants, whenever he wants. No, he actually isn't, okay? He's not.
Even the Heritage Foundation talks about the limits of the First Amendment and free speech. So, what of economic justice? The Constitution is silent on the right to earn a moderate income, silent on the rights to medical care and decent housing as legitimate claims of every human being from infancy to old age, which, by the way, is addressed in the UN Bill of Rights.
Right.
Whatever degree of economic justice has been attained in this country, impressive compared with others, shameful compared with our resources, cannot be attributed to something in the Constitution. It is a result of the concerted action of laborers and farmers over the centuries, using strikes, boycotts, and minor rebellions of all sorts to get redress of grievances directly from employers and indirectly from legislatures. In the future as in the past, the Constitution will sleep as citizens battle over the distribution of the nation's wealth and will be awakened only to mark the score. And there are constitutional amendments to amend or abolish Citizens United, blah, blah, blah. Okay. On sexuality, the Constitution is also silent. What women have achieved thus far is a result of their own determination. In the feminist upsurge of the 19th and early 20th centuries and the more recent women's liberation movement, women have accomplished this outside the Constitution by raising the female and male consciousness and inducing courts and legislatures to recognize what the Constitution ignores. Basically, what all of this is saying is the Constitution basically lays out what we have already accepted in many, many cases. Finally, in an age which war approaches genocide, the irrelevance of the Constitution is especially striking. Long ravaging conflicts in Korea and Vietnam were waged without following constitutional procedures. And if there is a nuclear exchange, the decision to launch U.S. missiles will be made, as it was in those cases, by the president and few advisors. The public will be shut out of the process and deliberately kept uninformed by an intricate web of secrecy and deceit. It was not constitutional checks and balances, but an aroused populace that prodded Lyndon Johnson and then Richard Nixon in deciding to extricate the United States from Vietnam. So basically, what what Howard Zinn is saying is that the Constitution is a nice document and a nice blueprint, but we drive the government.
We do.
Through our action or inaction, by the way. And we, the public.
Well, actually, we allow the government to drive us by our inaction.
Right. Well, yeah. But we, the public, do have the power. Now, when the Heritage Foundation talks about the public and self-governance and all of that, they're talking about a few people like Mark Meckler and and Rick Santorum to determine for us what can be changed. And basically what Howard Zinn is expressing in my mind is that we cannot be afraid of an Article 5 constitutional convention. If it happens, we need to embrace it and be ready for it. It's not going to happen, for a while now. There's only 19 states that have called for a constitutional convention so far. So we have time. The Democrats need to man up, gut up, and use the resources that the right wing is providing us, basically. So I can't read all of this. This is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. When I showed this to Deb, she was like, aha. And we went on a journey and we tried to amend some of this. Part of the issue when writing something like this, you tend to make yourself the center of it. Like the UN made itself the center in a couple of these articles. So the basic principle is that all of these rights, whether they be economic or social, they apply to everyone. And no one can use one of these rights to oppress the rights of another.
Okay, this thing has been translated. I mean, it's a nice document. We have a version on our website.
Yes.
And we have it as we adapted it to modern times.
Right.
That you can be seen at www.factivistproject.org, and I believe the tab it is under is Our Vision. You should go take a look at that one as well.
Just make sure you put that in the in the sources as well.
Right after this.
Yeah.
Our link will be right after this particular link in the sources.
To me, the most important article in all of this, nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, group, or person any right to engage in any activity, to perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and freedoms set forth herein. Which means your parental freedom doesn't give you the freedom to tell other people how their kids can be educated or who they can love or whatever. Just saying. So this is how the Constitution is seen by the Heritage Foundation. The Constitution translates the principles of the founding into a framework of limited government that remains central to the American way of life. Which basically means you can't tell me what to do if I don't like it. Basically what it means. And they are always complaining about Joe Biden, I have never heard one time that Donald Trump extended his power. Not when he created the immigration bans, he not when he did the billionaire tax cuts, not when all the stuff that he did. No complaints about him. Okay. So this, the Heritage Foundation, if anything, they're very verbose. So I find a lot of stuff that's recent, a lot of stuff they have written decades ago, but I'm seeing a lot of stuff on this very topic because they want to keep it going. Okay. Examining proposed constitutional amendments. Now, this is September 25th of this year by Thomas Jipping, a Center for Legal and Judicial Studies. Only the
By the Edwin Meese III Center for Legal and Judicial.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yep.
Never mind.
Edwin Meese. There we go.
Blast from your past, baby.
Eddie Meese.
Yeah.
Key
Eddie
takeaways.
Eddie Munster.
Number one, only the American people can revoke or alter the Constitution, which remains fixed until they do so by an explicit and authentic act. Two, states can pursue constitutional change and perhaps especially when Congress proved incapable or unwilling to initiate amendments on its own, which includes Ohio.
Right.
And we'll talk about that. The Article 5 convention of proposing constitutional amendments has yet to be employed directly, though it's pushed Congress to propose amendments. So this, and I will talk about this, just mention it in the links here. There is an 8-hour video of this constitutional convention reenactment just this year, September 19th, 2023. And this is what he's talking about. Okay. So this is how he looks at the Constitution. Today, more than 180 nations have written a written constitution of government. Even tiny Tuvalu in the South Pacific has one with 3 times as many words as Tuvalu has citizens. I don't know how many citizens they have, but whatever. It was not always so. The U.S. Constitution, which was ratified by the necessary 9th state on June 21st, 1788, is the world's longest surviving written charter of government. Its lifespan is nearly 13 times longer than the average national constitution. Our constitution is also one of the shortest, only 1/3 the length of the average national charter in the world around the world. So, okay. Let's see here.
By the way, there are 11,204 people on Tuvalu.
Okay.
They were formerly known as the Ellis Islands.
So, more than 12,000 resolutions have been introduced in the House or Senate to propose constitutional amendments. Okay. Of the 33 that Congress has proposed, states have ratified 27. And 4 that Congress proposed without a ratification deadline remain pending before the states. The remaining 2, the Equal Rights Amendment proposed in 1972 and the District of Columbia Voting Rights Amendment proposed in 1978, expired when their ratification deadlines passed. And by the way, they can be reintroduced. So, Reconsidering the wisdom of an Article 5 Convention of States. This is by John Malcolm. He's another director of the Meese Center and also the Simon Center, vice president of Institute for Constitutional Government. Okay. One of the things that is very appealing to the Heritage Foundation is there's never been a convention of states before, so they think that they can just kind of do their thing, which my position and the position of other people who have recognized this has come, this has come up, is that we need to set some rules before the possibility of this happening.
Right.
So that they can't just run away with this thing. So.
Because honestly speaking, if the right wing runs away with the Convention of States, I don't know. We're in trouble.
Okay, this is what I wanted to bring up from this particular article. So he's talking about the Convention of States, a grassroots organization. The Convention of States Foundation, it's not grassroots.
Okay. None of it.
Seeks to remedy that problem. The organization has been spearheaded by Mark Meckler, a conservative activist and co-founder of the Tea Party Patriots, which I will describe to you by the Southern Poverty Law Center in a minute. Mike Ferris, founder of the Patrick Henry College, basically called the Harvard of religious right colleges, and the Homeschool Legal Defense Association and former CEO of Alliance Defending Freedom, which we've talked about before, also mentioned by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and former U.S. Senator and Republican presidential candidate Rick Santorum. These people, yes, they are citizens of the United States, but they do not represent the majority of the United States. Seeks to call for a convention for proposing amendments limited to 3 subject areas. This is what they want to focus on. Fiscal restraints on the federal government. Number 1, I will remind you, Donald Trump exploded the budget with his billionaire tax cuts. Limits on the jurisdiction of the federal legislative, executive, or judicial branches after the Republicans commandeered the Supreme Court and many judicial appointments through Trump, and term limits for members of the federal legislative or judicial branches. What I will say about that is that Deb and I have talked about that before, that there are a lot of people who've been in there for 30, 40 years. But the thing is, you have to vote them out. We had 2 significant losses. 1, the governor of Louisiana, and 2, there was the Suffolk County executive on Long Island. The Republicans counted that as a big win, because New York is considered a
blue state,
liberal stronghold, and now Long Island pretty much is all Republican locally, and
that's what we don't want, folks.
Yeah, and they take their victories where they can. So my point here is that these people do not represent the general population.
No, they don't.
So we have the Tea Party Patriots pushing distorted U.S. history.
By the way, can I say something about the Tea Party Patriots?
Yeah.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
When we were talking about the COVID deniers and the misinformation specialists, people should know that people like Simone Gold, that doctor who was arrested at the Pentagon, at the Capitol,
Yeah.
And, that woman was on the payroll of the Tea Party Patriots. They have funded a lot of misinformation campaigns, and they have funded a lot of right-wing extremists. So people who think the Tea Party is gone.
They're not.
The Tea Party is now funding the MAGA movement. So as this right-wing movement has gotten progressively worse, it moved up to the Tea Party from where it was with whoever the heck, I can never remember, Newt Gingrich. This all started back 1998, way before.
Moral majority. Yep. Yeah.
So, we went from the Newt Gingrich to, moral majority, that contract with America bullshit. We morphed that into the Tea Party movement with the Sarah Palins and the Michelle Bachmans and the theocracy. And now the Tea Party movement is morphed into the MAGA movement, and it's gotten worse as it's gone along.
Yep. Just hope that Sarah Palin doesn't write your history books for your kids. Former Alaska governor and Tea Party favorite Sarah Palin this week, which was June 9th, 2011, tried to sell the bizarrely twisted story that the midnight ride of Paul Revere was to warn colonists that the British were coming to, was actually a ride to warn the British not to mess with the colonies. I know my American history, Palin said, arguing that part of Revere's ride was to warn the British that were already there that, hey, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to take American guns.
Jesus Christ almighty. I can't even.
Oh, geez. Now, again, if we're going to take any of constitutional law seriously, we have to acknowledge that within this country, everybody has rights, and by the way, a right to live.
Yeah, that's one of them.
Okay.
Right to go to a nightclub and not get gunned down. The right to walk in a movie theater and not get shot in the head. And
by the way, not to get run over by a drunk driver.
Right.
Okay. But at the same time, not to get shot in a movie theater, or, as Deb said, or in a church or in a school.
Yep. I mean, I don't understand why people have to carry fucking guns in the back pocket at a giant supermarket, but hey, who am I to ask?
Alliance Defending Freedom. Remember, we brought this up with Mike Johnson.
Yep.
Okay. Because he was part of this. Supported the recriminalization of sexual acts between consenting LGBTQ adults in the United States and criminalization abroad. Now, we talk about our own personal sovereignty, but we want to basically rule the world and tell people what to do.
In their own bedrooms, no less.
And again, I'll talk about this when we talk about Ohio, but this is Rick Santorum. Bemoaning his Ohio results, Santorum says that pure democracies aren't how to run a country. We just talked about citizens creating their own government. They're not talking about you and me, especially when they vote for something that Rick Santorum, Governor DeWine, or any of these right-wing shitbags don't want. Okay? It's by Elizabeth Crisp in the Hill, 11/8/2023. You can pretty much find this in a lot of places. But Rick Santorum also said that he didn't understand why Ohio allowed this, because when you put sexy amendments on the ballot to be voted on, young people will flock to it. Sexy amendments like the legalization of marijuana and the right for women not to die from an ectopic pregnancy.
Sexy amendments, right? Like everybody's just stupid. Sexy amendments. Like, oh, well, hell, rights aren't any big thing. That's just, playtime. You know, these guys
Now,
are just fucking amazing. It's amazing to me.
now, I normally don't do this, but Sarah Silverman, okay, yes, she's a citizen and she has a right to express herself, and I thought that this was amusing, so I'm going to bring it up. Uh, you put very sexy things like abortion and marijuana on the ballot. Young people come out and vote. Santorum said, "Sexy issues like abortion. What are his porn search words?" it's, it's so, you know. Um, The comedian went on to cite an NBC News report that found GOP strategists seeking a new means to rally behind pro life messaging after finding a poll that indicated the term no longer resonated with voters.
They're
They're
looking
looking
to
to,
rebrand it. It's funny.
but personally, I feel this, they should be forced to carry this phrase to term, she said. Okay, so now, and again, this is just a framework. Deb and I are going to talk about how far we want to go. Do we want to like touch on every single amendment? How far do we want to go with this? But this guy is Arthur Malik, former associate director of the Kenneth Simon Center, and conducted research on America's founding principles at the Heritage Foundation. Okay, rethinking the rights. Now, here's
None of it is good, by the way.
right. Hold on. I I want to find
When they're done, it'll be the Bill of Wrongs.
right. I want to. There is one thing that I wanted to bring up. Uh, let's see. Da, da, da. There we go. One fruitful way, however, to look at the different parts of the Bill of Rights is in terms of how they were intended to preserve the spirit of republicanism. Okay, so they go specifically to the two, of course. Of course, you go to the Second Amendment because Heritage loves their guns, and the First Amendment because they have they want to say whatever the hell they want to say. Um, Now, the freedoms of speech and the press are perhaps of the greatest importance. Among the goals of free speech is to cultivate the virtues of deliberation among citizens so ours can be a government by reflection and choice, as Hamilton says in the Federalist One. And as Benjamin Franklin explains, the freedoms of speech and press are directed specifically toward discussing the property and of public measures and public opinions. In other words, rational political speech is meant to be protected and honored, which is fine. However, there's one thing. So this, the virtues of republicanism. Understand that the Republican Party is seen in the House and also with Trump is wildly dysfunctional right now. It took them how long to find their House Speaker?
15 votes to get McCarthy in.
15 votes to get McCarthy in. They kicked him out. Then they bounced around for at least 2 weeks, maybe almost three. They can't even find one of their own leaders.
And not for nothing, right? This all might sound like, okay, this kind of stuff happens. But guess what? It has never happened before in the history of the United States. And it isn't happening for, all of a sudden, we have a bad speaker. What it really turns into, what it really was a result of, was that they couldn't find a speaker that was extreme enough to carry out their bullshit until they managed to shove in
Mike Johnson.
Who's a lunatic.
Right. Now, Deb showed me this, and immediately, I was like, okay, I have to incorporate this in. This answers the Heritage Foundation on Article 1 and Article 2.
It's amazing.
Both of those articles in the Bill of Rights were not designed to protect this. Okay, remember, we had an insurrection. And now Trump echoes Hitler, threatens to rid America of vermin from within. Understand, he's talking about
that word was used before. Okay.
Citizens of the United States protected under the 14th Amendment. And I'm going to go back to a minute. Let me see if they talk about it. Now, the 14th Amendment guaranteed African Americans the right of due process and the equal protection of the law, but it also protected all naturalized born citizens. Understand that. Donald Trump is waging war on some of these people. So this is just, there's a lot of articles in there. Mike Johnson he was a lead counsel for the Alliance Defending Freedom. So that's how he's connected to the Convention of States, because he knows some of these people that were also involved in that. And he fully supports the Convention of States in its right-wing ideation. This is just a list of proposed amendments to the Constitution of the United States. It goes into the amending process and blah, blah, blah. So some of these are not good, like the Federal Marriage Amendment, talking about making same-sex marriage illegal across the board. Then you have campaign finance reform. Okay. Representative Randy Neugebauer introduced an amendment requiring a 2/3 majority for Congress to raise the debt ceiling. It's not good, by the way. Yep. Representative Steve King introduced an amendment repealing the 16th Amendment and abolishing the federal income tax, which might sound appealing, but and there are more, which we are going to talk about.
That sounds technically appealing until you understand just exactly what that means. What that means is none of these stiffs who owe the federal government $250,000 and up. That's what the whole funding of the IRS was for, was to go after big-time millionaires and billionaires who don't pay their taxes. Okay? That means that you will have no income from billionaires. They will just run amok, and they won't pay their fair share for anything. It is, I'm sorry, folks, ridiculous. And by the way, one of these is good, though. Representative Al Green introduced an amendment prohibiting the President of the United States from issuing a pardon for himself.
Right. Yep.
Because
there are some
Jackaloon would do that in a nanosecond.
Right, and I believe that was introduced right after that, or like it was proposed.
Right.
So
You need to look at these though, because there are a lot of bad things in here.
some bad, some good.
Right.
Okay. This just goes into the amendment process. I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's talks about how normally it would go through, like go through Congress, how many votes were needed, and then you have to have a majority of the state assemblies vote on whatever the amendment is in order to pass it.
So it's
All
not
right.
an easy process, okay?
Right. Which is why the Convention of States wanted a constitutional convention, which is provided this is something not just made up. So this is the Convention of States official website. And I always say, when you have a store inside your website, it tends to, especially something like this, a governmental site.
They have
So,
like oppress a gay person T-shirt and stuff like that. I wonder if that's what they got that way on there.
you'll see it in a minute. I have it keyed up, I think.
And look, anytime, can you go back and just take a quick look at the top again?
Real quick,
Yeah.
because I just wanted to show you this before we go back up there. Yeah, and there's some doozies up there. This is an 8-hour presentation. I skimmed through some of this just to hear some of their proposals. One is to propose a cap on the Supreme Court justices. Just say it's 9. It can never be changed again. Once they did their fun plan.
To stack the court, they want to make sure we don't expand it to try to make it more even-handed.
What, this or that on top?
Supreme Court. No. I just wanted to say that anytime you have, a group on the Convention of States and they're paying homage to a clown like Mike Johnson, you're
right. Right. Exactly. So let me see here.
Here's some
here we go.
I love these. Is woke Disney on the rocks?
Exactly. I saw that too. And I don't know. Listen, I even read. I read some of this. Small town boots entire local government for engaging in Chinese business deal. I'm like, okay.
The same writers that write Epic Times must write these.
Article 5 outfitters. They're here. Limited edition Christmas ornaments. I will support and defend a Constitution of the United States. Apparel for a purpose.
Jesus Christ.
Here we go. God. Shop by category. Pocket guides and constitutions. So this way you can be indoctrinated in pocket form. God have mercy. So
can you roll down to this? They actually have a black person in there posing with a shirt. I want to get something. These are models. You know how that works? I used to hire people like this at Millipore when I had to do an ad to make them look like scientists. Those are models. Okay.
Right.
Making themselves look good.
Oh, Lord. Now this is a graph of who has already called for a constitution of states, where everybody is, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The blue, there's active legislation in place. The green already passed the COS. I believe Oregon withdrew, just so you know. Yellow, it passed in one chamber. So, of course, you got New Hampshire. But
How Hampshire, that's what I call it.
So this whole push started in 2014. Georgia was the first, of course.
Yep.
Our penal colony. So South Carolina was the last one, March 29th of last year.
I'm not surprised. Look at the states. Just take a look at them. I mean, come on.
Yep. Now this, I wanted to put this in because what you have to understand, this is a long process. This is about Wyoming voting on this thing through their legislature. And let's see here. Are they on here as Wyoming? Right.
Passed in one
So
chamber.
it passed in one chamber. They're working on getting Wyoming to be the 20th one. Okay. So lawmakers in one chamber of their assembly has advanced this thing. Now, here's something I just wanted to throw in there. So this is from the Intelligencer. So, will the Supreme Court blow up 233 years of established law and nullify hundreds of state constitutional provisions that govern federal elections? Believe it or not, and this was recent, that question was in front of the justices on Wednesday in case of Moore versus Harper. And when was this? This was December 7th of last year. So
they already ruled on that.
Yeah. And it didn't pass.
Yeah, that's right.
But so the context is this independent state legislature theory. Okay. According to this theory, state legislatures are empowered by the Constitution to determine how federal elections are held, free from state constitutional provisions or state judicial review. So what they're trying to do is give more power to the state legislature. Mm-hmm. And we will go into it possibly. Just so you know, in the early 20th century, the way the U.S. Senate was voted on changed through a constitutional amendment. Originally, the legislatures picked those senators.
No.
It switched to the popular vote. Okay. And some people in the Heritage Foundation said, well, due to, you want a balance of power, blah, blah, blah. We should take that away, but the voters would never allow that, probably.
We better not.
Okay. No.
Do you want the state legislatures picking your senators? I don't think so. We're relinquishing more power that way.
Think about the Tennessee Three. Think about Zooey Zephyr in Montana. You're going to just basically give up your power to the possibility, whoever is in power at the time. No.
That's absurd. No. It's absurd.
Now we're going into a very good win, but a demonstration that the Republicans don't want representative government. Now, if the fact that Trump called some of the people vermin, it's different. Listen, it's different calling people a basket of deplorables to vermin. Vermin are something to be exterminated. Deplorables, you ignore them, basically, or you oppose them.
She was right about that, by the way. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know. Ohio voters enshrined abortion access in Constitution in latest statewide win for reproductive rights. Okay. Immediately, even before this happened, we hit, and this was August 28th of this year by Susan Tebben, abortion rights amendment petition writers sue Ohio ballot board for deceptive ballot labeling. They're saying that they have deceptive language on the ballot, so this should be thrown out. And Mike DeWine is going to also challenge. You won't let me finish. This was when he was talking with Caitlin Collins.
Just keep in mind that Mike DeWine is the guy who didn't push the button for help when that train derailed. Remember that. Right. This is the same governor.
Now he's claiming that this constitutional amendment would potentially allow abortion until the moment of birth. And
yeah,
okay.
That is that's a fallacy.
This is what Caitlin Collins basically replied with, and it's true. You're saying it goes too far. They will allow these late-term abortions, Collins said. Only about 1% of abortions in the United States, according to the CDC, happen after 21 weeks. But the language that's in this amendment is pretty short and straightforward. It says abortion may be prohibited after fetal viability, which, as you know, is generally determined around 23 to 24 weeks. So it does say you can prohibit it. Here's Mike DeWine. There is an exception to that, which you also have to know. The exception says that for the health of the mother. Health of the mother has been defined extremely broadly by the United States Supreme Court in an abortion case. Health of the mother.
You know what? That's pretty clear. If the mother's going to die on the table, people, no, they're you know what? Again,
right?
They're unbelievable. They can twist anything they want, whatever way they want. And they do.
I wanted to mention this because I said before, after that basically Rick Santorum, after that Ohio vote, said that America wasn't designed to be a democracy, a full democracy. So this is from the democracy docket talking about voting rights. Now, voting rights by themselves, they were not established in the Constitution. They weren't. It allowed the states to form election protocol, but the rights were not placed in there until later through amendments. After the abolition of slavery and in response to a growing push to extend voting rights to more Americans, a series of constitutional amendments added protections to the right to vote to the U.S. Constitution. Now, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So more than 1/3 of those after the Bill of Rights include or pertaining to voter rights. Understand that. The 14th Amendment extends citizenship to all born or unnaturalized Americans, regardless of race, and guarantee that rights of citizenship, like voting, cannot be restricted by the states. Okay. 15th Amendment prohibits restricting the right to vote due to race. Going back to Howard Zinn's point, how many African Americans have been killed trying to vote? Do you really think that the racist killing of African Americans trying to vote looked at the 15th Amendment of the Constitution and said, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't do this? No.
No.
The 17th Amendment, which is what I was talking about just a few minutes ago, requires states to elect senators by popular vote, not by state legislature. The 19th Amendment extends voting rights to all women. 26th Amendment extends the right to vote to everyone 18 years of age and older. Understand that there are Republicans right now looking to amend that
To 25 years old.
to 25.
Ridiculous.
Now, my point is, if you can serve in the draft, or if there is a compulsory draft that happens and you're 18 and you have to enlist in the draft, you should have the right to vote, period. Additionally, the 24th Amendment explicitly bans poll taxes, which often perverted low income citizens of all races from voting. So, a great deal of these include, or a great deal of these amendments pertained to your right to vote if you're a minority or if you're a female, or if you're 18 years or older. Now, what will I say to that? Vote. You were given the right. People fought for this. Some people died for this.
And by the way, there's another reason, actually, even beyond serving in the military, why 18-year-olds shouldn't be penalized like that. You know, technically, you're out of high school. You're either in college or you're working.
Right.
If you're working and you're paying taxes, you should be able to vote. I don't care if you're serving the military or not.
Right.
The story. Okay.
Right.
What they want to do is they want to restrict the 18 to 25-year-old voting age because they know those people are not going to vote Republican.
So, this is from the Brennan Center. All right. Is a new constitutional convention a good idea? Concerns over the risks have led to a near universal opposition from the left, but some are asking whether it's wise to take that option off the table. And this is by John Kowal. This is in August of this year from the Brennan Center. One of the fears is that because this has never happened before, that the people who are spearheading this thing, and they've already had two mock constitutional conventions. And by the way, one of the ways to make this unpalatable is to make it boring as hell. So I'm trying to get through the whole 8 hours of that. I don't know. I don't know if I can really tolerate listening to all of that, but we're gonna have to if we're gonna fight this thing. He does mention this was originally posted in Newsweek, but the bottom line is that this is part of the Constitution, and the Democrats have time, and we should research this and maybe even legislate how this is going to come about, and certain rules in regards to how this goes, and take advantage of it instead of being afraid of it. Embrace it. They did mention that Orrin Hatch, and I know Orrin Hatch was Republican. There was somebody else. Let's see. They mentioned, there we go, Sam Ervin and Orrin Hatch champion bills that provide a helpful place to start, and just setting the rules of this kind of convention. Just because these guys are going over and playing constitutional convention people doesn't mean that they're going to run it. And they shouldn't. This should be bipartisan if we're going to do this. which is not what they want. Again, this wasn't by mistake. I put it in here again. This needs to be looked at and incorporated if we have a convention of states. And as many of these principles that can be incorporated that involve individual human rights that are not already in the Constitution, including but not limited to this. By the way, there's a link right in there. You can let's see here. Da da da.
That's ours.
This is actually theirs.
Theirs. Oh, I
Yeah.
must have put it in. That's why I printed that out, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
At one point? Yeah, okay.
So,
It just looked like my computer, that's all.
right. Now, here's two that I want to mention. Everyone has the right, liberty, and the security of person. That's personal sovereignty. The pursuit of happiness is great, but what the hell does that mean? Pursuit of happiness might be, beating a minority, which, no, I'm just saying. Article 4, no one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all of their forms. Why wouldn't the government want to put this in? I don't know, maybe prison work. They don't pay them a fair wage. And also, can we stop with these propositions to pay Joe Biden $1 and to pay Deb Haaland $1 and to pay, Pete Buttigieg $1 and
No, we got a new one now. Karine Jean-Pierre has also been reduced too.
Oh, of course.
Well,
you notice that
yeah.
Except for Biden, every single one of these are minority.
Right.
Every single one of them.
I'd like to just, put this forward to the people. This is what your Republican House is spending its time doing, because none of that is going to happen, by the way, because the Senate's never going to take it up.
Right. Okay. So here is what I'm talking about when I talk about we need to fight back on some of this. The Article 5 convention can be used to our advantage. Gavin Newsom showed us that. And others, actually. Governor Newsom proposes historic, and it is, 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution to end America's gun violence crisis. Now, let me be clear. This sets groundwork to allow state gun laws to protect its citizenry. This language is misleading. If this passes, it won't end gun violence. We have to end gun violence by personal action and by, just by perseverance and trying to curb this. Okay. Our ability to make a more perfect union is literally written into the Constitution, said Governor Gavin Newsom. So today I'm proposing the 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution to do just that. The 28th Amendment will enshrine in the Constitution common sense gun safety measures that Democrats, Republicans, Independents, and gun owners overwhelmingly support, while leaving the Second Amendment unchanged and respecting America's gun owning tradition. Now, will Republicans see it that way? No. The 28th Amendment will permanently enshrine 4 broadly supported gun safety principles into the United States Constitution. Will this be somehow changed at some point? I would imagine so. Raising the federal minimum age to purchase a firearm from 18 to 21, mandating universal background checks to prevent truly dangerous people from purchasing a gun. And I would also not mind mental health checks or, looking into people's mental health history. That's fine. In regards to this, they could be used in a crime. Also looking at their criminal history. Instituting a reasonable waiting period for all gun purchases, and probably Deb's favorite one, barring civilian purchase of assault weapons that serve no other purpose than to kill as many people as possible in a short amount of time. Weapons of war our nation's founders never foresaw. Now, the Republicans will freak out saying that the military or the cops could have weapons, blah, 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 and they're not going to be able to protect themselves, blah, blah, blah,
But
blah.
I'm tired of hearing that.
Yep.
Americans don't need weapons of war on the streets. They don't.
But no, don't.
They serve absolutely no fucking purpose. And by the way, I'd like to reiterate this once again. The number of times that Americans use weapons to protect their family or their property hovers around somewhere near 1%. Okay? That is not what guns are used for in America by and large.
Now, here are a few others that are being proposed by Democrats. New effort to rescue the Equal Rights Amendment. This was in July of 2023. Kristen Gillibrand and Cori Bush introduced a joint resolution stating the gender equality measure has met ratification requirements and should be finalized as the next amendment. Whatever gets ratified first will be the 28th, and then the next one would be the 29th, just so you know. The ERA is the path that brings our entire country towards true gender equity. So, and this may be fought even more because of LGBTQ. And that's going to be a fight worth fighting, but it may prolong this. So we need the ERA to make sure that Har-1's civil liberties and everything from gay marriage to Title 11 to the right for reproductive health care, access to birth control, fertility treatments, and contraceptions can no longer be eroded either now or in the future.
Correct. So,
point being, Democrats can do it too.
Right.
It's another one. Schiff, Phillips, Jayapal, McGovern introduced constitutional amendment to rein in unrestricted campaign spending. This is to basically somehow overturn Citizens United. I don't know the details of it, and Deb has basically expressed concerns about it in the past because you start ripping that away, you just have to be careful with it.
I do think it's the amount of money though is crazy. I mean, I think what they're talking about is not all money. I think it's dark money. It's money you can't trace, that goes unreported.
Right.
I mean, that kind of stuff. Look, I would love it. To me, my ideal. And you know what? It's totally unreal. Well, maybe it's not so unrealistic now because we do have, Zoom and the internet and stuff. But I would love it if we didn't have to pay $4 million for a 30-minute fucking political ad. I think news channels should carry political advertising as a public service to the electorate. I do. I don't think that NBC should be allowed to charge that money. I think there should be a minimum charge for all of that. I think that's we need to return that. You want to return this to the people? We used to have public service announcements that were free.
Right.
So we need to kind of change our whole perception of what an election should look like. Now, I realize that we can't go in an airplane and fly around the country and land in little cities and have, a ton of that's costly too, all right? So it is. But there have got to be ways to make this more organic than to continue to take all of this corporate money. I mean, look, I'm going to tell you right now how I feel about this. I don't think that the Democratic voters should expect the Democrats to run on no budget. Okay, I don't. I mean, the way our system is right now, everything is visibility, out of sight, out of mind. But at some point, the parties have to come together, and they're not going to come together with this particular GOP. But at one point, the Democrats and the Republicans were working together to change campaign finance. Okay.
One thing I want to mention real quick, because the United States Postal Service was maligned in regards to elections, especially this last one. There's something in place where, especially with the local politicians, each politician has one mailing per day, for a certain period of time up until an election. We used to get inundated with political ads, okay, which actually kind of made it difficult to deliver on time. But the point being, what Deb is proposing is not that outlandish. But when you mandate, political ads can only be, let's say, 20 seconds. Everybody gets the same amount of airtime. Whatever they want to put in there is fine, but you get the same amount of airtime and you get the same amount of spaces, like prime time. You get one prime time slot a week and whatever, however many, whatever. But then you get into, the news stations don't want to do it. They're violating their blah blah blah, whatever. So,
by the way,
the Postal Service does it.
I would have no problem with overturning Citizens United. I think that would be. I think we were spending enough on elections before that. So, right. The Citizens United, just all that did was give corporations unfettered ability to pour money into campaigns, and I'm not sure that I have no problem with that portion of the program. Let's get rid of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, in terms of using money as political speech, boycotts have been, not our boycotts, good Lord, but, boycotts have been effectively used in the past. Yep. So, yeah, but that is just a smattering of some of the things that have been proposed. Deb mentioned the one, I believe it was Al Green, barring someone from pardoning themselves. This is just basically, not only New York, we need to get our shit together and we need to vote. Okay. We lost a Suffolk County executive race because the Democrats have not been energized to vote for some reason. Well, it's an off year. It doesn't mean that much, blah, blah, blah.
That's a common problem with Democratic voters.
Yeah.
Democratic voters don't get excited unless there's a president running.
Right.
They can take the midterms off. They can, I'm just going to take this one out, sit this one out. You know what? We're going to get over that, folks, because I'm telling you right now, there isn't an election in this country now that isn't critical to keeping our democracy, and that includes starting at school committee level. Get a clue here.
Now, let's see here. So, okay, I'm going to read a little bit of this. Turnout in New York elections is almost always depressingly low. Last week it was abysmal, producing a slate of candidates chosen by just a handful of the millions of people who live in New York City. In Manhattan, preliminary results show that just 5,000, almost 5,700 Democratic voters cast ballots in a judicial primary for a civil court judge, a position with a 10-year term. That Suffolk County executive position is a 4-year term. part of the problem too, again, term limits. Steve Ballone, who was a Democrat, is a Democrat, would have been reelected, but he had a 12-year term limit. In Brooklyn, Councilwoman Jennifer Gutierrez, a Democrat, appeared to win her primary with almost 3,000 votes, which were 81% of the total ballots cast in that race. In the Bronx.
What's wrong with people? You know, yeah. Seriously.
Yeah. So here we go. In the Bronx, District Attorney Darcel D. Clark soared to an easy victory in the Democratic primary by winning a little over 20,000 votes in a borough of nearly 1.4 million people.
So again, let me reiterate this. You know what? In the world, we are 31st in voter turnout. We are abysmal. Sorry. That is just unbelievable. I can't say it enough.
Right.
A borough of 1.4 million people, and how many people voted? Under a million? Under 50,000?
It's 20,000 in a borough of 1.4 million.
Unbelievable.
Now, this is my final point. For those of you who tell me, well, Dave, colonialism is gone. We're not doing that anymore. We're not really doing slavery. We're not doing so and so. We're not oppressing people. We're not keeping people from voting. Everyone has representation, really. Number one, Washington, D.C. Number two, I wanted to mention this. Colonialism is prevalent worldwide as well. This is an article by Elliot Ross, and he mentions colonialism around the world. However, how about Puerto Rico? Just asking. Okay. Caribbean island, which economic and social crisis rooted in long-standing policy and compounded by natural disasters, the COVID-19 pandemic, migration, and government mismanagement. Okay.
So if you go, I'll just tell you this because I've been to Puerto Rico, okay?
Yeah.
I've been there on business for meetings, You fly into Puerto Rico, you go to the Dorado Beach Hotel, right? You're on a beautiful white sand beach.
Right.
It's a gorgeous, gorgeous place to have a meeting. It's amazing. And then you take a ride into San Juan, Old San Juan, and some of the other areas.
Right.
And you realize really that the oasis in Puerto Rico
it's a lie.
It is really that way. And these people, I really don't understand. I understand why Puerto Rico is not a state. I do. It's pretty clear why people are objecting to both DC and Puerto Rico. Again, I'm going to say it flat out. They will not vote MAGA.
Right. Right.
The seat of our government sits in DC, and they're not a state. They have no representation. So. And
the Heritage Foundation point blank said, and I think it may have been in the Convention of State. No, actually, it's somewhere in the literature of the Heritage Foundation that in order for DC to become a state, a constitutional amendment will have to be written.
Right.
Probably the same for Puerto Rico. Now, Puerto Rico, if they want to become a state, they have a right to vote whether or not they want to be a state, or whether they just want to be free of American influence.
Right.
who, by the way, didn't help him at all during the storms years ago when Trump was in office, if you remember that. And
I
he
do. And
and
I do
he
remember how insulting and how
yep.
nasty he was. I mean, this is a guy that's the president of the United States talking smack and shit about a territory that was in crisis. This is what I mean. You know, I mean, these people are disgusting beyond any kind of belief.
So Puerto Rico, which became a U.S. territory in 1898 following the Spanish-American War, has some measure of self-rule. That doesn't do. You either have full self-rule or some representation in Washington. They have limited representation in Washington, which means somebody is there, but they don't vote. Saying out. So this is a little history of you know, Republican imperialism versus Puerto Rican democracy, a long history. This is in 2017. And then something recent. This is a flu epidemic. More than 900 hospitalizations and dozens of deaths reported. And as Deb said, if you fly into Puerto Rico, you're not going to see this.
Right.
You know.
If you're an American going on vacation to Puerto Rico, you're going to a resort.
Right.
Where are you going?
But the point being, Puerto Rico should either be a sovereign state or, if they wish to become a state, should have the full support and full rights of citizenship. No one should be in limbo like this. And I remember reading about Hawaii too. Not everybody in Hawaii wanted to become a state. It
Right.
was contentious. But that is the first installation. Go away. Who are you? Go away, CNN Health. All right, there we go. So that is the first installation of this. I think this show encapsulates pretty much everything that we've been talking about for 5 years. If you don't come away with anything but this, the Convention of States can be a good thing if we are active in government, if we vote, if we pay attention to what's going on. And the other thing we have to do is recognize and realize our history. Do not allow the Republicans to take that part away. It is a vital part. I don't feel I didn't do it, but if we continue to ignore it, other people will not have rights when they should. So the big part of this 2025 plan, Project 2025, is to use the Convention of States to limit Democratic presidential power and increase the power of local state governments, and maybe even get some oppressive constitutional amendments in there. So, and no one, uh, Deb's ultimate goal, my ultimate goal on all of this is to help create buzz and create some kind of call and cry for a national true Bill of Rights that is mirrored in the UN Declaration of rights, which, by the way, is considered international.
Right.
And by the way, when the United States talks about they want to be kind of a lone nation, they're full of it. They want to be a lone nation when they want to be left alone, but the way that we increased our landmass, we were the imperialists. We are the imperialists. We've we've taken over. Yeah, we're done as far as I know, but
Unless we take Puerto Rico. No, I'm only kidding.
unless we, yeah, but for the most part, we're done. But that doesn't mean that that isn't based in our history.
Right.
And I'm not telling you to be guilty about it. What I'm telling you about, or what I'm telling you to do, is to now recognize that these people are now citizens of our country and they have the same rights as everybody else.
Right. I would like to say one thing about that whole feeling bad thing about it, because I hear that a lot, as the excuse why they don't want children to learn history.
Right.
I got to tell you something. If your kids feel a little bit bad about the way our country behaves, that's called empathy. Okay, I know. Well, let me see. The empathy to us, woke to the right. Okay, but I'm okay with having an empathetic citizenry because I'm looking at the most non-empathetic, vile human beings on the right side of the slate.
That whole woke thing, here's another theory I have about the whole woke thing, is that you have people who have been oppressed for many, many years, and the Constitution has been held up as this beacon, kind of like the Bible, as this beacon of democracy. That this is the end all be all. But as I said in the introduction, Howard Zinn pointed it out. The Constitution, without the American citizens behind it, is just a piece of paper.
It is. It is.
And the very people that were brought over here and oppressed, the very people who were told that they were just here, women were told that they were just here to serve men. Now they're waking up and saying, hey, we're people too. We're citizens too. Started with the 14th Amendment, honestly. We're citizens too. We have a right to vote, work, live, work for an equal wage, have a decent home, etc. Not be discriminated against.
And we don't all have to get married and bear children.
Right. That too.
Yeah. So, we have a lot to, I think we have a lot to be concerned about, and I think we have a lot of opportunity.
Yes. Oh, one more thing to wake up at. Anyone who says that any United States person is a vermin and that needs to be exterminated. By the way, I'm not talking about John Wayne Gacy or Ted Bundy or those guys. I'm not talking about that.
I'm talking about a man who wants to be president of the United States.
A man who is talking about being a president of the United States, calling the people who disagree with him vermin that need to be eliminated. That's the same rhetoric of Nazi Germany.
Okay? Get a clue. All right? None of this is by mistake. None of what he's saying is serendipitous. None of it is anything that isn't part of what he idealizes. He loves Vladimir Putin. He loves Viktor Orban, even though he can't remember what country he's from, but we'll worry about Joe Biden's mental health, won't we? Yeah, let's do that. A man who thinks he beat Obama, and a man who took credit yesterday for signing a bill that I have a picture of Barack Obama sitting at a desk signing. So let's worry about Joe Biden's mental health.
Let's ask Donald Trump about the state of Bonomo. How's that?
Yeah, right. So, we have an opportunity here. I mean, I do believe eventually there will be a convention of states, but not only do we have to be smart enough to take advantage of that, we must. We have time to do this. This convention of states should not take place while MAGA is in power. I'm going to tell you, because here's the deal. The so-called moderate Republicans voted for this nitwit that is now presiding over the House of Horrors, thinking that they could control him. I don't know what gave them that impression, but frankly, MAGA is in control of the House. It is not anything that the moderates have the absolute balls to take away from them. The moderate Republicans are cowards. End of story.
I didn't want to make this about Mike Johnson again, but basically I've seen a couple of articles saying that his honeymoon phase is over already based on just a couple of things that he's done. So, as I said before, he pulled out that whole IRS part, not because he thought it was wrong, but because he knew it wasn't gonna pass. Just the sheer fact that he proposed aid to Israel pissed some people off. Yeah, so anything that he does,
unite the House.
No, he's not by any stretch of the imagination.
He's going to unite the House. There is, even if, honest to God, even if there was an opportunity to do that, MAGA does not want to unite with the moderates. MAGA wants to eliminate the moderates. They have their own agenda.
And it is changing the Constitution, and limiting the powers of the executive branch. That is their core goal here. And by the way, they're telling you that in the Convention of States, you can only do a certain amount of things. Where is it that says that? I haven't seen anything that says that you can only do this, this, and this.
You're right, because someone once said to me, they can, if we have a convention of states, it's only for that one subject. I said, no, it actually isn't. It's not. I don't know where you get it. I don't know
propose anything.
I know. I don't know where these people are getting those. I went looking for that after that person said that to me. This was a few years ago. It wasn't just recently. I can't find anything that says it's restricted.
Well, that's through the Heritage Foundation. No, that's through the Heritage Foundation. They're saying it. That it's only, it's restricted to those three topics, like federal spending, the separate. No, you don't get to set the rules of this thing.
The Heritage Foundation does not dictate the rules of a convention. They're just a fucking think tank. Okay,
right.
So
understand that.
So that's
we can propose whatever we want to propose,
and so can they.
And they can play house. They can play their little constitutional conventions. I'm going to take a look at this thing. I don't know if I'm going to watch the whole 8 hours. I actually had a conversation with Debs, and I think we should hold off on this thing because of this. I knew it was going to be long anyway, this one, because as I said, it's really, to me, this is like one of the more important shows we've done. But I was like, should we do a watch party of this thing? God, no, because you know what they're going to say. I all know.
Honestly, we'd have people asleep on their keyboards.
Right.
Honestly,
exactly.
I mean, it's like watching fucking grass grow. But you know something? Again, I'm going to tell you this. At a constitutional convention, it wouldn't be. It's a grind. It's not an exciting thing to begin with. It's detailed. Right. I mean, it is what it is. But I swear to God, sometimes they make these things boring so people won't watch them, so they won't know what the hell's going on. But,
right.
With their simulated little, ideas here, I sometimes wonder why they even post this stuff, honestly.
Well,
probably so that the rest of the right wing, that's probably who's going to watch this.
Right. 8 hours. 8 hours of this thing, of watching people walk back and forth from table to table, putting freaking table, like those freaking triangles on the tables. That's like hours of it. I'm like, and if you've ever sat in a boring classroom with a boring PowerPoint presentation, that's what it is. But this is important information.
It is.
They're talking about things that you need to know about. They're talking about, now that we've stacked the court, with our judges, we don't want any possibility of that number going up or down. By the way, there is a way to do it right now through Senate vote, but we're not going to be able to do that anyway. Why? Because we don't have the numbers.
So
Again,
let's get the numbers. Let's get the
let's.
numbers.
By the way, if we get the numbers and we do it in a timely fashion, they're not going to be able to counteract it, because the only way they could counteract it is through a vote. And if they don't have the numbers, they've lost the game.
No, so let me say this. We need to change our voting habits. It's not just for this one election, okay?
Right.
I see people out there still talking about we just need to get through 2024 so we got good candidates for 2028. I have some freaking bad news for you. If we don't win in 2024 decisively, there is no free and fair election in 2028. You can't seriously think that after everything you've all seen, that Donald Trump and the Republican MAGA Party is going to give up control of the government, do you? Because I don't.
I know for a fact how boring it is to talk about filing deadlines and primaries and Robert's rules and all of that stuff. I was a Green Party officer for a very short time, and so was Deb. So we know how boring it can be. But we have to pay attention to special elections, when somebody passes away, when there's somebody that we can get in. We got a lot of people in, and we have won this. The Ohio vote was the 7th so far.
Right. 7 wins on the abortion issue alone. Let's make it 8, okay, ladies, and all of the male supporters of women. Let's make this happen, okay?
And by the way, now that you're gaining steam on this thing, don't compromise either, because the Republicans are talking about let's step back and let's see how we can pivot from this and give them 15 weeks. No.
No, we want the original row codified, okay?
Yep.
End of story. That's the idea here. That you will get with a Democratic Party victory, because Joe Biden has vowed to sign that into law. So let's give it to him to sign, okay?
It's not just about abortion rights. It's also about personal sovereignty, medical freedom to choose, what medical procedures you give your child or you yourself.
And contraception, by the way, they're coming after
contraception. And same sex.
Yeah.
It's like, whose business is it? And by the way, I'm going to say this again, in terms of people who have transitioned and want to transition back. That's their business. If they made a mistake, that's their mistake. And if someone, I messed up her name before. I want to say Chloe Koopa. It's probably the wrong name.
It's not. Koopa. I can't remember her last name.
Yeah, Chloe something. But but Cole, was it Cole?
Yep.
I think it was Cole.
Yes.
So people who transition, then either they were tricked by a doctor who was not acting in good faith, or they made a poor decision, or whatever. I'm sorry, you don't affect the rest of the country because of that.
Our experience.
You punish the doctors who are not acting in good faith. You
Right.
take away their medical licenses.
Right.
But you don't punish the rest of the rest of the country.
Right.
It's my business what I do with my body, as long as it doesn't harm other people.
And it doesn't.
And, if Deb decides to hold the hand of her partner in public, oh, my stars and garters, that does not negatively affect you. And if it does, stay home.
Cross the street. Whatever the hell you got to do. I don't really care.
Right. Honestly. I mean, talk about snowflakes. Jesus Christ. For God's sake. Oh my God, somebody's in drag. Oh,
Jesus. All right.
All right. But that is, I don't know how long this thing is.
Almost
hour and a half.
I think.
What was it?
An hour and a half at least, maybe.
Yeah, at least.
I don't know.
But we did the promo. You might want to break it up, but this is going to be, this is going to be a journey. I may take a few, I may just do the First and Second Amendment next week. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we can break them up into small shows if you want.
I think that's the way to do it.
An hour,
especially, yeah.
A number of whatever it is, and do them for an hour, whatever.
I think that. I mean, there's some constitutional amendments I didn't even know existed. Honestly.
Yeah.
And some people don't even think, like with the 16th Amendment, there are people out there looking to repeal, as I said, the federal income tax.
Right.
I'd be wary of that.
I'm not doing that. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not. I'm just not. That's not being done to benefit the people.
Now, what's going to be taken away? SNAP, Social Security, Medicare, all of that's going away. Funding for public education, all that's going away if the taxes are taken away. Just letting you know.
Oh, I don't know. Wait, MMT. Wait. Oh, wait. We're just going to print more money. That's right. I forgot. Okay. Yeah. I forget that. That was another thing. That's another story.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about him. MMT. I won't. Yeah. Hi, Steve. All right.
Anyway, yeah.
All right.
So here we go. We're done here. Listen, I know this is long, guys. Break it up if you have to. Okay. Put it on hold at 45 minutes. Go do whatever you got to do, but come back to it, because I know this stuff is long, but something, we really need to nail this down here. We're in the final stretch here. We're almost at a year now we're actually under a year now. When's the election? November 7th, 2024? Well, it's November 12th, folks. Okay.
Yep.
We're in the stretch now.
By the way, before we go, again, I'm not being facetious about this. To all those veterans out there, thank you for your service. And we are trying, okay? We're trying to make people aware that Tommy Tuberville is a tool and a piece of crap. He is negatively affecting the military, the active military right now, because of his own personal belief. And
again, the Republicans in the Senate have no courage. They're cowards. They're just sitting there saying, well, I hope he's going to change his mind soon. They've been saying that now for what, 4 months? It's been 4 months almost. Okay. Where's Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Republicans in the Senate? Where is everybody?
And Lindsey Graham clutching his pearls and saying, shame, 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 shame on you. So what? I gave him a tiny bit of credit. So what? They're not doing anything to remedy this situation. Nothing. And, You want a convention of states run by those guys? They can't even get military appointments through because of one guy.
Right.
Okay.
One guy from a state that is honestly small.
Right. And they cannot condemn an ex-president spewing the rhetoric that he's spewing, the violent rhetoric that he's spewing.
And
There is
they were talking today about how Ronna McDaniels just kind of downplayed it, ignored it. But again,
enough.
they're not gonna change their ways. You've seen what they are. They're behind
Right.
him. The GOP is not doing a thing. I don't
I
see.
know.
I mean, if these guys, all right, take like a Mitt Romney, take like a, I don't know, any other senator in there that does not consider himself MAGA. Why isn't he saying you can't elect Donald Trump president? Why aren't they saying that? These are people who are supposed to care about this country and care about the people in it. They're all a bunch of bullshit artists. They're cowards.
When January 6th happened, I was told by some of the people I used to stream with, Dave, show me the evidence that he's promoting violence. I don't think there's any question now.
There is
There
no
shouldn't be. There's no question.
There's no question. The apologists have question, but there's no questions. The evidence is clear, or there wouldn't be a case. I'm telling you.
And he won't shut up.
No, he won't. He won't.
So that's what we got for now. We'll be on this train for a little while.
We'll see you next week. Bye bye.